Hello, creeps. It's me, John Kassir, the voice of the Crypt Keeper, and you're listening to Chronicles from the Crypt.
Hello there, I'm Casualty Chris.
And this is Father Malone.
And we are the hosts of Chronicles from the Crypt, a twice-a-month look at the horror anthology series that you love and so do I, Tales from the Crypt.
Now, on each of these podcasts, we do 2 episodes of Tales from the Crypt, and along the way, in between seasons, we do bonus episodes based on sort of tangentially related crypt ephemera, including one. The next episode is going to be one of those.
And I can't wait to talk about the next episode, but until then, we got to get through this episode. We have to get through the final 2 episodes of Season 4, Werewolf Concerto, and Curiosity Killed. So Werewolf Concerto aired September 9th, 1992. It is directed by Steve Perry, written by Scott Nimmerfro, and it stars a whole bunch of people. Dennis Farina, Timothy Dalton, Beverly D'Angelo, Reginald Vell Johnson. Charles Fleischer is there for, what did he, wandered off the Demon Knight set?
Sure did.
And Wolfgang Puck.
Inexplicably.
For whatever reason, in the mountain
Classing
resort.
it up.
So the episode focuses on Timothy Dalton as a werewolf hunter who is at a hotel at the same time a werewolf seems to be going berserk.
Coincidence?
I don't think so. Also, is it kind of weird that Walter Gotell and Timothy Dalton are in a movie together or in an episode of this, and they were also in James Bond movies together?
I think it's wildly appropriate.
Well, I agree. You're not going to get any disagreement out of me. I also love, my favorite thing about Walter Gotell as being a fan of the X-Files, he plays Klemper in the X-Files.
I had forgotten that.
But boy, this is a real waste of everybody's time. And I'm not just talking about the people watching it.
Yeah, I mean, okay. All right, Werewolf Concerto, as most episodes of Tales from the Crypt, was not based on a Tales from the Crypt comic. It's based on Vault of Horror. Vault of Horror number 16, written and drawn by Johnny Craig, the worst of the EC luminaries. The script for this, the episode that we get, is very close to the original comic. In the original comic, it is less of a murder mystery. It's just that they know that there's something killing people out there, and in this case, in the comics case, they feel like because the murders have been happening, that they need to hire an entertainer who will come and boost the credibility of the hotel once again to reinvigorate sales. So they end up bringing in this opera singer and her giant piano, and then it turns out that, oh my God, she's a vampire. So that's the spin they put on the episode. They turned it into more of a who done it. But ooh.
The answer to that question, who cares?
Who cares? Yeah.
Because not only do we get a misdirect, we also get a misdirect on one of the characters being a Nazi.
Yeah, that was a little weird, right?
Well, I mean, it's a misdirect with inside of a misdirect, and neither one of them land, so great.
Yeah, it seems, as a lot of Scott Nimmerfro's episodes seem, a little overly complicated, while trying to hew toward the more comedic episodes of the show, which never works. Man, doesn't it seem like every time they get a comedic episode, like everyone involved just sort of decides, well, we're going to fucking ham it up now. Whereas if they played it straight, the humor might come off a little more meaningfully.
Yeah, I don't understand what it is with the humor in this show. The humor hasn't yet to land.
I mean, I think it landed a little bit with the Christopher Reeve episode. But
it was still horrifying.
A lot of the I think a lot of the jokes were like super obvious, but like it seemed that nobody in there was interested in doing a comedic performance.
Right.
They knew that the situation was comedic, just for its absurdity, so they played it as straight as possible. Always works best. Like, remember, like Leslie Nielsen, I think most people will think of him as a comedic actor, but like his comedy was based on the fact that he wasn't a comedian. So like as his career went on, he kept sort of hamming it up and like being the clown, like, going for the big laughs. And that's when that sort of nosedive for me. But like if you watch him in Airplane or, any of the Police Squad or the Naked Gun movies, like he plays it as if this is the most serious thing on earth, and therefore it's like 1,000 times funnier. And nobody on Tales from the Crypt ever kind of got that, other than that, I think that Christopher Reeve episode, as far as the comedy goes. Like, just like let it play and we'll enjoy ourselves. Not that it was going to save this episode, which is contrived to the nth degree.
Well, and like I've said before, it seems like to me the episode thinks it's smarter than it actually is. Like, we know that Timothy Dalton is the werewolf from the get-go.
Pretty much.
Right?
Yep. I mean, I don't think there was a doubt in anyone's mind. Like, you can contrive all of these characters, you can throw in a million little misdirects, but just on a surface level, when you have Timothy Dalton as the lead in your show, he's either going to be the werewolf or he's going to be the twist. Like that, the twist in this ends up being that he's killed by a vampire. So he was either going to be the werewolf or the vampire. Like, he's not some werewolf hunter that just happened to be staying at this chalet in the middle of nowhere.
Well, and like you said, if you have Timothy Dalton, who was a big deal in '92 because he was playing James Bond, or just come off of playing James Bond?
Yeah, I think maybe he had already, his time had passed.
But, you have him in this episode. It's kind of like Chris Evans in Knives Out. Don't cast him. Don't cast him in this if they're not going to be doing what everyone thinks they're going to be doing. Yeah,
exactly. Don't cast an actor in something like this and not expect us to know that he's going to want to do something against type. That's a perfect example is the Chris Evans thing. He's been Captain America for the past 9 years. Like, I wonder if he's going to be the villain of this whodunit that we're watching.
And what a shock. That's the case in this episode. Timothy Dalton, and look, the sad thing is, my favorite James Bond is Timothy Dalton. I love Timothy Dalton, pretty much everything. He's in one of my favorite movies, The Rocketeer. I love him in that as a villain. I love him as James Bond as kind of the doing the dark thing before Daniel Craig even had, any inkling of an idea he was going to be cast as James Bond. But to waste him in this episode is such a disappointment. Really a real disappointment for me.
Yeah, there seemed to be a lot of that this season, right? Like an actor who you're just like in love with who ends up like not being given much to do at all. I mean, it's always good to see them. He's not bad in it necessarily, but he deserves better. I would like to have seen him in one of the more sterling episodes that we got this season. Just seems he got short shrift.
He really does. And look, you've got Beverly D'Angelo in here as well. You have a bunch of folks, and they're essentially all given nothing to do. You have Dennis Farina, of all people, given nothing to do.
I know, right? Then okay. If I do have a major problem with the episode, it's Dennis Farina's stereotypically gay concierge or hotel manager, whatever the fuck he's doing, man. It's just like it's a little bit out of hand.
Yeah, it's a little bit much, but let's not kid ourselves. That's the least worst thing about this episode.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I mean, as far as what offends me as a viewer, I think the sort of lazy storytelling is more offensive in this episode.
Yeah, I agree. 100%. The laziness of the story that's being told is such a bummer that it feels like I said at the top of this kind of segment, it's just wasting our time and theirs. And Beverly D'Angelo is the werewolf hunter, but she's a vampire. Who cares? Just who cares?
Yeah. Now, if I may throw in a brief autobiographical pause. Now, I knew Scott Nimmenfro. He died just about 2 years ago. He was not a close friend of mine, but an acquaintance of mine. We spoke every now and then. He ended up writing for the TV series Hannibal, and his episodes were really good in it. So I don't want to besmirch Scott's legacy too much. His episodes of Tales from the Crypt were not great. At the time that this series was going on and I was living in Los Angeles, I was actually hired to write an episode of Tales from the Crypt. And I chose a werewolf episode, which I wrote. And when I turned it in, Scott was like, well, we've already got a werewolf episode, so we're not going to be using yours. And it turns out it was his episode, and my episode was better, and I just wanted to say that.
Well, let's not kid ourselves. The bar is set insanely low by how bad this episode is.
Insanely low. I know, man. Like, I could have turned in, the worst thing ever, and it was going to be better than this episode. It's just there's just no magic to what we had to watch here. This is 100% a skip from me.
Yeah, it's a skip for me, too. As much as it pains me to skip an episode that has my favorite James Bond in it, T. Dalt, who's gone on to do so many good things. Like, just his presence in Hot Fuzz alone makes that movie as more amazing than it could possibly be.
Yeah, and you know what? He ended up showing up on Doctor Who as the Doctor Who is a Time Lord.
Yeah, that's
from
right.
Gallifrey. Yeah, he showed up as like the president of Gallifrey, and man, he lent such a level of gravitas to the episode that I don't know. I already loved him, and then I loved him even more when I saw him doing that. So
he lends a level of gravitas to anything that he's in.
He really does. He's got that fucking, I don't know, man, like all the way back to Prince Baron in Flash Gordon. He's so good. There's a lot of really good actors in that movie, but like he's really good from the beginning to the present. And
if you haven't seen him in James Bond, do it.
Seek it out immediately. Like
License
those
to
movies
Kill
aren't
is just
the movies I don't think are that. I think the movies, again, just like this episode, are doing him a disservice. I think Sean Connery is my favorite James Bond just because that's my James Bond. But Timothy Dalton, to me, is right there, at least beside him, for a different level of what that character could be. Showed us the way that character should be portrayed. And it always felt like a betrayal that Pierce Brosnan got to do the sort of more fun James Bond movies, because I think if you had stuck Timothy Dalton in any of those films, as lighthearted in places as they were, they still would have been better with him as James Bond. He's phenomenal.
So let's move on to the final episode of Season 4, Curiosity Killed.
So glad you could drop in, Kill Seekers. Don't worry about me. It only hurts when I laugh. Oh, boy, that was good. It's even better than hang gliding. Of course, some folks would rather keep their feet on terra firma, like the people in tonight's putrid piece. They're spending a nice quiet weekend in the woods, going hot to nature. I call this fetid fable Curiosity Killed.
So Curiosity Killed is directed by Elliot Silverstein, written by Stanley Ralph Ross. It aired September 16th, 1992, and it stars Kevin McCarthy, J.A. Preston, Madge Sinclair, and Margot Kidder, but good God, you wouldn't know it, because the makeup in this episode takes away everything good that could possibly come of it, which is nothing. And the episode centers around an elderly couple out on a retreat with another elderly couple who happen to be looking for the secret to youth and regaining your youth. And of course, it wouldn't be Tales from the Crypt if things didn't go awry. And you know what, Father Malone, I'm going to beat you to it. This is a Tales from the Crypt story.
Yeah, it sure is. This is Tales from the Crypt number 36, written by Al Feldstein and Bill Gaines, and drawn by the amazing Jack Davis. Now, having said that, it is based on a Tales from the Crypt story. However, it bears virtually no relation to the comic that it is adapted from. Have you read the comic?
I have.
Yeah, it's insane, right?
Yeah, oh, it is.
The comic book is a woman who begins to suspect that her neighbor, her like husband's best friend, like their neighbor has murdered his wife because she hasn't seen the wife in a while, and she's noticed that the husband has now taken up with homing pigeons. He's got like a coop and he keeps sending out pigeons, and where's the wife? And it turns out that the husband has killed the wife and has been cutting her. He cut her into tiny pieces, tiny enough that a homing pigeon could carry the pieces away, and then he would go to that location where the homing pigeons were going to dispose of the body, and that she's next, unbeknownst to her, although it becomes evident in the final couple of panels that they were going to kill her and do the same thing to her. What a crazy fucking story that could have been magnificent and not a... I don't know... The makeup on this episode is so bad. You have Kevin McCarthy, who is admittedly pretty old at the time. You've saddled him with two other actors and Margot Kidder, and slathered on the worst kind of old age makeup you would ever see. And as if seeing Margot Kidder in this old age makeup from the opening frame, you know, okay, this episode is about her regaining her youth somehow, right? I mean,
oh yeah.
Why else would you have her in it and put her in this makeup? And talk about doing a disservice to an actor. We only get to see Margot Kidder for, 10 seconds in the fucking finale?
Before she's eaten by a dog.
Yeah, like let's throw in this twist here at the end where she gets eaten because she's denied these people not only their youth, but they end up dying because of it. But they were doing the same thing to her. Like, it doesn't feel Twilight Zone-y, like everyone is going to get fucked at some point. It felt like we have to throw the twist in here because it's Tales from the Crypt and we need a twist. Whereas, like, her putting one over on them was enough of a twist. Like, why does she have to be killed by the dog at the end? I don't know.
Oh, and that's the thing I don't understand is none of the characters are redeemable.
Not even remotely.
No, and so it's just bizarre to me.
Yeah, they're all fucking assholes, and she's sort of saddled with those assholes. I mean, she's not that great a person herself, but she's certainly not what they are. And, like, to have her, get a comeuppance for effectively dealing with a bunch of people who are pricks and don't deserve to relive their lives and be pricks all over again, it felt like a cheat.
Well, and that's the thing about the episode that really I walk away from this episode feeling is how bizarre it is compared to the original story, and what a zero note episode it really is. There's no notes to this episode. Nothing happens. Like, literally nothing happens for 23 minutes. It's
almost a bottle episode. Like, we've got one, maybe two locations. They just are talking, and then they're out digging, and then, I don't know, they're drinking some shit.
And then they turn into the fucking character from Last Crusade, and they just blow up into a bucket of bones.
Boy, sure. Don't they?
And Margot Kidder's here doing the stereotypical bitchy wife thing.
Yeah, like...
As if we've never seen that before.
Oh, man, that shrewish wife. Yeah, it's an innovation in writing and performance. Like, I don't know. We've said this a lot. You got to wonder who's fucking running the boat, who's, steering the ship here. Like, this is how you're going out? This is the episode.
It's a little over a year until the next season in real time, and this is the bad taste you're leaving in everyone's mouth.
So now for the next 6-9 months, a year, you're like, oh, I can't wait for Tales from the Crypt to come back on because it really left an impression on me. Like, no. And what's funny is about that, like, I don't necessarily remember, like, seeing this episode and thinking those thoughts, but I did have a sense at the time while I was watching it and it was airing, like, I don't necessarily need to tune in every week. Like, you know, if I miss one, that's okay. You know, like, this is season 4. They should be all awesome.
Well, and that's the thing. This episode, and I quote, to quote the Bible, sucked a fat one. Because it had there's so much going on that's bad, and there's so many angles to look at it as being a poor episode. It's the finale of season 4. We're essentially halfway done with the show at this point because there's only 3 more seasons left. It's the only time that we get to see Margot Kidder and Kevin McCarthy on the show, and they're both fantastic actors, and they're completely wasted. I mean, I could go on. I mean, it's just everything about this episode is just atrocious.
Yeah, all the wrong steps you can take with the Tales from the Crypt episode are in evidence here. And
especially reliance on really poor makeup.
Yeah, like, come on, man. Like, go to town and give us... You know, I could maybe look past the supporting characters' makeup not being great if Margot Kidder's makeup had been great. But even that is not great. It's just like a slowly melting wax figure, and that's old.
It's real bad.
Little Big Man, this is not. This is, this isn't a Dick Smith level of makeup going on here. This is just good enough, which is, I think, a good metaphor for this season entirely. Good enough. Does it have the twist? Okay, cool.
So let's actually get to that. So, like we do at the end of every season, we talk a little bit about the season as a whole. And I think you've already gotten straight to the core of it. And I know this season took us a little while longer than normal because we took a little bit of a break. Our schedules were very busy, as they tend to become towards the end of the year. Unfortunately, the holidays get in the way of being able to do podcasting consistently. And, you know, that's just the way it goes. And boy, you know, I think you're completely right.
Yeah, it's good enough, right? I mean, that's sort of the feeling. Like, does it have this, that, and the other? Okay, go make the episode. The ultimately frustrating thing about that is it seems like if they had just taken an extra week or two and worked on the script and gone, wait, what are we really saying? Or what are we really trying to do here? Can't we just layer in something else? Then it could have been to the level of some of the greater episodes. And this season, more than the other seasons, I think, in retrospect, have episodes that are based on stories where the story is better than what we got. Like, that's weird. Like, it's not so weird when you see a movie based on a novel and everyone's like, the novel's better. It's like, of course the novel is better. You have much richer characters and denser plot because that's what you can get away in a novel, and you can't necessarily get away with that in film. These are based on comic books that are maybe 8 pages long, and you can go to town and enrich those stories. And here, in a couple of cases, the stories were so much more interesting than what they ended up delivering. So, I don't know, man.
Well, especially in the last case with that final episode, good God in heaven.
Yeah, like, that particularly, like, that, the story it's based on is, like, so bizarre. You know, there was another episode that, like, the original comic was, like, told from the perspective of the house, the sort of haunted house that it was going on in. Like, that's interesting. Like, I don't know, like...
Well, let's not forget, this season was also weird because we had 3 episodes in this season that weren't at all in any shape or form Tales from the Crypt. That's
true. We had a trio of Two-Fisted Tales that, you know, was a pilot for another television series that they just sort of crammed in and gone, like, again, good enough. Like, it's as close to Tales from the Crypt as it can be, right? Like, you know, there's some kind of a twist in there. Like, they're ghost cowboys. That's Tales from the Crypty, right?
Right. Well,
you know,
sure.
Yeah, like,
it's more Tales from the Crypt than the other 2 episodes.
Certainly. I mean, one is a straight-up war story with a bit of irony, and the other one is just an action thing that has no irony in it at all. It's like the least Tales from the Crypt that you could possibly get. Just people driving fast. Like, that's the plot. So, I mean, Yeah, and I understand that, these are the producers of the show, and they got that pilot made, and they don't want it to just go to the wayside, so they want it to be exhibited in some way. But at the same time, like, those are... I mean, I like Yellow a lot, so I'm not going to take anything away from that. But like the other two, those are two spots where we could have had another adaptation of a horror story, a supernatural story that would be more in keeping with the Tales from the Crypt EC tradition, and they just kind of pissed it away.
Well, and
Good enough.
well, that's the thing. The thing that's weird is there is this kind of 3-episode respite of things that are not Tales, but I do think you're completely right. This is the missed opportunities season.
In every way.
Yeah, I mean, we normally do this at the end of every season. If you've been listening along with us, at the end of every season, we've been doing this thing where we talk about our favorite episodes and our least favorite episodes. Can you even pick a favorite episode this season?
Yeah, I mean, the name is escaping me right now, but the Christopher Reeve episode I thought was worthy. I thought,
okay, yeah, I think that's got to be it, right? That or Split Personality.
Yeah. Oh my God. I mean, look, there was no episode this season. Every season previous to it, there's an episode where I could just automatically point to and go, "That's a great episode." This one did not have a great episode. It had episodes that were good enough. And I think in that case, that particular story, like, I enjoyed it sort of beginning to end. Like, we've already mentioned, but like the comedy episodes on Tales from the Crypt tend to be played really broadly and not are not effective in any way. I think that's the one episode that kind of the actors and maybe the director kind of grabbed the tone that this is a comedy episode, but we're going to play it straight, and therefore let the dark humor sort of percolate, as opposed to just like wacky sound effects. So that's my favorite episode this season. I think you agree with me, right? Like,
I completely agree with you. I mean, Split Personality is a close second, but that's just because I love Joe Pesci as an actor. But yeah, I mean, it's got to be What's Cooking, because thinking back on it, the way I think about episodes of this show, like being quality, is when I think about Tales as a show, do I think about this episode when I talk about the great episodes? And if we're going to create like a playlist for the show, which I think probably towards the end we should maybe come up for like a playlist of like a best of for the show for people to watch, as like you don't need to watch the whole show, you can just watch some of these episodes. I think this would make the playlist. I think What's Cooking, I think Split Personality might make the playlist, but as for everything else for this season, I think Split Personality and What's Cooking are the only two episodes that would make the playlist of episodes worth watching from this season.
Yeah, let's pick a worst episode. Can we possibly do that?
Well, it's not even like a worst, right? Like, I think it's like just the episode that I think failed the hardest, because I don't want to say worst, right? Because it was a failure of an episode. The one that's the biggest failure, I don't want to say Curiosity Killed, because it's too fresh.
No, and it's not that bad. It's just like, it's bad.
It's almost so bad that it's not even anything.
Right. It's just kind of there. Like, it didn't like anger me. I didn't feel like I wasted my time with it, because there's something to draw from it. But for me, it's the Blythe Danner librarian murder episode.
You liked that episode, though.
Did I?
Yeah, that's the fucked up part. It is a bad episode. I told you. When I'm have come around.
Looking back on it, like, it was just kind of there. Like, I don't know. I mean, honestly, I don't know. The King of the Road.
No, I've got it. I've got it on a dead man's chest.
Oh my God, you're absolutely right. That is ridiculous. Doesn't even feel like a Tales from the Crypt.
Yeah, that episode is legitimately awful.
Yeah, real bad. That fucking guy is so unappealing. Yeah, I take it back. Blythe Danner, I love. She's, I can watch her doing whatever. But yeah, that, oof. And William Friedkin, like, it's disappointing on so many levels.
Yul Vasquez.
Yeah, what a guy.
Yeah. What a mess. What a mess of a season, and what a mess of an episode. It's one of those things where, like, we've had this conversation, it seems like we have this conversation more and more often. I remember this show a lot more fondly than it somewhat even deserves.
Yeah. I mean, and
look, we love this show. We wouldn't be doing this if we didn't.
Do. I can go back. I'm sure I feel the same way about, like, X-Files. Like, at the time I was watching it, I loved every single episode. I think if I were to go back and sit and watch all 22 episodes per season, I would say these 3 are great, these 2 are okay, and then the rest are just kind of filler. You know what I mean? Like,
oh, I'm with you. As someone who was gone on the record as saying multiple times that the X-Files is their favorite show, which it is for me. And look, let's not kid ourselves. You know why I've never done an X-Files podcast? Why would we? There are so many X-Files podcasts. The Kumail Nanjiani X-Files podcast essentially got the show back on the air, and he went on the show and was part of the show and part of the cast of the show. So at this point, I would say, and I don't know how you feel about this, there's no need for another X-Files podcast in the history of podcasting. It's just, unless you can do something truly unique, no one cares about anyone's opinion on X-Files. And unlike with Tales from the Crypt, where there are several other podcasts, but it's not like the market has been cornered.
No, and all those others are garbage.
Okay, but I'm not going to go that far.
Yeah, I will. I'll do it for
either.
They're not good. You're listening to the best one if you're listening to the show. But it is like, like, let's do, like, I have a movie review podcast. Like, let's do one about Jaws. Like, what the fuck can we say about it? You know what I mean? Like, it's done, look, man.
Like, we're creative dudes. Like, at least I think we are, but that's confirmation bias. But even we can't say anything about Jaws or Close Encounters of the Third Kind's a good movie. Yeah, it is. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, good. And anything, to attempt that sort of thing, like, okay, we're going to do a podcast about Jaws. Like, we would have to contrive something new to say about it. And it wouldn't necessarily have anything to do with the movie. Like, that's what most sort of latter day, like, film criticism tends to irk me, because, like, oh, I'm gonna come at it from this like completely bizarre economical angle. Like, who cares? Like,
they're
it's
digging.
A good movie.
They're really digging.
Yeah, and you don't want to die on the hill of, like, criticizing something just so you can. Like, it's just.
Or maybe you do. I don't know you. Maybe you do want to do that. I'm not saying you. I'm just saying maybe you do. Yeah. But if
you want to do that, go ahead.
It comes back to, with this show, the lack of creative direction is getting in the way of the show being great. And it's not for lack of source material being amazing.
Nor is it the lack of talent behind and in front of the camera.
Exactly,
it's like
that as well.
This has no excuse to be great week after week. It really does seem like there's no sort of too many chiefs, you know what I mean? Not enough Indians or something. Like, like too many people, like, going, yeah, okay, that's fine.
It takes a lot to make a stew. Too many cooks.
Too many cooks. Anyway, we tend to just sort of bag on the series at the end of every season because of this flaw in it. Does not diminish how enjoyable the series was watching it for the first time, and I'm sure if you're watching it for the first time, you're going to get something out of it. And there is a lot to mine in these episodes. There's a lot of really good ones that keep us coming back. So,
well, no, here's the thing. I'm actually going to walk that back. I'm not sure there are a lot of really good ones. The good ones are good enough that we come back.
Yeah.
Like,
but aren't there a couple of
The Man Who Was Death is a legitimate masterpiece of TV filmmaking and TV storytelling. But, like, I'm not going to remember season 4, episode 5, Beauty Rest, ever again.
Oof.
Right?
Nor should you. Yeah.
That's my point. Good. Like, this is not verging on X-Files territory where there's 25 episodes a season, but somehow with only 13 to 15 episodes a season, in the second season's case, 18, there are episodes of this show that are just atrocious. And they're only 23 episodes long, they're only 23 minutes long, which is the even more bizarre part.
Yeah, I'm more forgiving of, like, an X-Files where it's like, well, they set out each season and they want to tell these, 15, 16 stories and then have to fill in the gaps. And you go, okay, well, that's a lot of television to have to produce in a season. This, it's a half hour. It's a different story. You can do whatever the hell you want. You've got great source material to draw on. You got a lot of talent behind it in front of the camera. Why isn't it fantastic every single week? It should be great.
There is carte blanche given, and you know how we know this? Because Curiosity Killed is nothing like the story from the comic. I'll just use the title.
Exactly. Like, this episode might as well have been called something else and just said, we
it could have been called The Fountain
based on anything. Yeah. I mean, it had nothing to do with anything. Somebody contrived this on their own. Come on. There's so many good stories. If they had just done the actual story, it would have been more successful.
Yeah. 100%. I 100% agree with you. And it's just, it feels almost like a Tales from the Crypt, like, tacked on, too. Oh, it's about the Fountain of Youth. Who cares?
Who cares? This is so far from Tales from the Crypt.
Yeah, like, if this is what you drew from Tales from the Crypt when you watched the show in preparation to write a script for the show, you missed the mark. Big time.
Yeah.
It's a bummer. I mean, look, it's not the worst thing that's happened to the show. Is it ending on the fourth episode or the fourth season ending on a sour note? But it's not great.
It happens.
It has, and it will continue to happen. Because one of these seasons is going to end on an episode where they use Humphrey Bogart's face.
Yeah, they sure do.
And that is ostensibly the end of the show being created in the United States, because that's the final episode of season 6.
Wow.
Yep.
You murderer. They were talking to Zemeckis. He killed the series.
So, just so you're aware what the next episode is going to be, Father Malone, would you like to tell everyone what we're going to be talking about in our next bonus episode before we get to season 5?
Absolutely. Our bonus episode, which you'll be listening to next week or 2 weeks from now, is the first theatrical release under the Tales from the Crypt banner put out by these folks. There was a Tales from the Crypt movie that we've already discussed in a previous bonus episode. We're going to be talking about Tales from the Crypt presents Demon Knight with William Sadler and Billy Zane, and Jada Pinkett is in there. Charles Fleischer is also in there, and directed by Ernest Dickerson. I'm excited to talk about it.
It's a great movie. I like it a lot, and I know you don't.
I do not. I'm going to watch it again. There are parts of it that I find very appealing. There's a lot of concepts in it that I like a lot. I feel... Oh, well, we'll talk about it in the episode.
Big Billy Zane, let's just put it that way. And it is the show, and it is, I also believe it is the movie's 25th anniversary.
Yay!
So, yes, it sure is. This film came out in 1995. I'm looking forward to it. I really look, and maybe rewatching it with critical eyes is gonna change everything, but I do know that Demon Knight is the reason that I am doing this podcast, because many years ago I sat down and watched Demon Knight because I hadn't seen it forever, and I remember thinking to myself, man, it would be cool to talk to William Sadler about Tales from the Crypt, and then here we are.
Lo and behold.
William Sadler talked to us. If you haven't heard that interview, it is the first episode that we ever did. And we talked to William Sadler all about The Man Who Was Death. I think still my favorite episode of the show.
Easily.
So, until then, where can people find you, Father Malone?
Check me out on my YouTube channel, Ot5 Films, my show you've never seen. Yeah, you can check that out. You can also hear me over on Dreams for Sale, the Twilight Zone 85 podcast about the only good iteration or reboot of the Twilight Zone back in 1985. And occasionally you can hear me over on the Culture Cast guesting. I'm a permanent guest.
It's true, so I've heard. It's a real thing. You're there, I'm there. Make sure to check me out on the One Season Show, where I talk about TV shows that only lasted one season with my good friend Jess Byard. She's been here when we talked about Creep Show. You want to know why we didn't finish talking Creep Show? Because I don't think any of us could make it through it.
Yeah, it was real bad.
You can also find me on The Life and Times of Barney Miller, a Barney Miller podcast where we talk about the TV show Barney Miller. That's it. Those are the places you can find me. ChroniclesFTC.com is where you can find us on the internet. Chronicles FTC on Twitter as well. Big thanks, as always, to John Kassir, the voice of the Crypt Keeper, for interviewing with me. You're going to hear that interview next season when we talk about Oils Well That Ends Well, the first episode Father Malone and I ever recorded together, and we ended up just redoing the entire show. We're closing in on it finally. We're almost there once again. And big thanks to him for doing the intro, outro. Thanks to him for the intro for Chronicles from the Crypt. We'll catch you on the next episode.